Hey, and welcome to part 2 of PowerPoint 2.2, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire's lecture. If you have not yet watched part 1, make sure you stop this video, go back and watch part 1 first. Okay, don't forget you need with you your blue notes, 2 highlighter colors, and something to write with. We're going to quickly review what we already covered in part 1 and then move on to finish up the PowerPoint. So we were talking about how Rome falls, and a big reason why Rome falls is due to multiple internal problems, things that are actually happening inside of Rome amongst the Roman citizens and the Roman government. One of those internal problems was economic difficulties. They have to raise taxes, which was a big problem for a lot of Roman citizens. They have to raise taxes because they stopped conquering new lands for the first time in Romans history. And without conquering new lands, you don't have any new wealth coming into the empire. No new wealth meant higher taxes. So that was a money problem for a lot of Romans. A second problem that we looked at that was an internal issue was social difficulties. A social difficulty was the price of education was so high that a lot of Romans were no longer being educated. And over time, this leads to a lot of ignorance in the Roman Empire. People are ignorant about what's going on in Roman civic matters and in Roman government. And so that kind of leaves the government up to their own devices without being watched too carefully, which usually is not a good thing. A third problem we looked at was agricultural decline. The soil has been all used up. There's no new good nutrients or vitamins and minerals in the soil. And so crop production is down. Even though the population is soaring and huge, you're going to have a food shortage. Additionally, the slaves that were used to farm the land really discouraged Romans from ever improving farming technology. Hey, the slaves are going to do it. We don't need to improve the system. Why spend time doing that? So with slave labor being used, there's really no improvement in farming technology, which will ultimately add to the food shortages that are happening. A fourth problem that we looked at, the last slide you guys saw on the last PowerPoint, was military issues. Military issues were things like the military becoming more disloyal and less disciplined over time. Another issue was that a lot of military personnel were no longer loyal to Rome itself or to the Roman emperor. Instead, they're loyal to individual military leaders, which isn't always the best for Rome because sometimes those individual military leaders didn't want the same things as Rome wanted. All right, moving on to new information. There was a military video. I'd always encourage you to watch the videos. Sometimes test questions come out of the videos, so make sure you give that a look before you move on. It will be available right next to this video clip on my website. All right, the fifth and last internal problem that Rome is facing is political problems. All right, remember, a lot of people are becoming ignorant and not as involved in Roman civic matters and in Roman politics. Well, when people stop being involved in the politics, that leaves the politicians up to their own devices. And the Roman politicians start to become more and more corrupt over time. Corruption means that you are purposely doing things you know you shouldn't be. You're stealing money, you're lying, you're twisting the truth, you're creating laws and things that are going to help you and your buddies and not necessarily all of Rome. Okay, you're not a good person. And unfortunately, a lot of the politicians in Rome became corrupt. They were more interested in living a lavish lifestyle and throwing parties and living in mansions and helping themselves than they were actually interested in doing their jobs or helping with public affairs at all. Looking at number 14 of your notes, what happens to the politicians in Rome? Well, they start acting corrupt. I want you to look at the slide and realize almost the whole entire thing is in red. So if you write something down and it's red, make sure you bust out that super duper highlighter color because it's most likely going to show up on a test or a quiz. Additionally, remember if something is underlined in yellow, you want to bust out that summary vocab highlighter and highlight it because those words and phrases must appear in your summary if you want full credit. All right, so that was 14. Number 15 asks you to review the 5 internal problems of Rome. You need to remember all 5 of these, as well as have an example handy for each type of internal problem. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Okay, you have a test coming up on this stuff, guys. You want to know the 5 internal problems and examples for each one. So for example, the first internal problem, do you guys remember all the way back to the beginning? It was economic difficulties. The second internal problem was social difficulties. The third internal problem was agricultural decline. The fourth one was military issues. And the fifth internal problem was political problems. Nice job, guys. So you want to know all 5 of those internal problems. Okay, I want to remind you again that the decline of Rome is a very slow process. It takes several decades, in fact, about a couple hundred years, for Rome to ultimately end up falling. And a big reason why it takes so long is because there are 2 very determined leaders that ultimately become emperors of Rome that do things to help it from falling faster. So looking at number 16, why was the decline of Rome a slow process? Well, a big part of that has to do with 2 leaders who try hard to keep Rome going strong. The first one is Diocletian. Go ahead and say that, you guys. Diocletian. Diocletian was the ruler of Rome starting in 284, all right? And he does something pretty smart. Rome was really large and it was hard to rule over the entire thing. And so Diocletian decides, hey, what if we make smaller areas to be able to govern efficiently instead of trying to govern the whole thing as one big whole? And so Diocletian decides to create 2 parts of the Roman Empire. All right, he splits it into 2. He creates an Eastern Roman Empire and a Western Roman Empire. And initially, there's still only one ruler over both of these parts. Over time, however, what will happen is you'll end up with one ruler for each part of the Roman Empire. But Diocletian is the guy that comes up with that idea. Let's make it easier to govern by splitting it into 2, because 2 smaller parts are easier to manage than one big whole. Looking at number 17, what does Diocletian do for Rome? Well, he splits it into 2, an Eastern Roman Empire and a Western Roman Empire. All right, following Diocletian was another successful ruler whose name was Constantine. Constantine does 2 important things that helps the empire hang on for a while longer. One thing is that Christianity has steadily been growing across the empire, especially in the Eastern Roman Empire. A lot of people by the time Constantine is in charge are Christian in the Eastern Roman Empire. It's not quite as popular in the West, but it is spreading. And so what Constantine does in the year 313 is he outlaws attacks on Christians. He makes Christianity legal. Remember, it had been illegal up to that point. And Constantine himself actually changes from a pagan religion to Christianity during his reign over the Roman Empire. So that's the first thing that he does that helps Rome hang on for a while longer. The second thing that he does is that he moves the capital. The capital for pretty much all of Rome's existence has been Rome, in what is now Italy. He moves the capital from the Western Roman Empire over in Rome to the Eastern Roman Empire to a city called Byzantium. All right, remember, if something's red, underline it or highlight it. If something's in yellow, then underline it. All right, if you're not ready, push pause, because here we go. Continuing on with Constantine and what he does. So he moves the capital, right, from the Western Roman Empire to the Eastern Roman Empire. Well, when he does that, he doesn't want to keep the city known as Byzantium. He decides to change the name. He is the emperor after all, so he wants the city named after him. And so he creates the city of Constantinople. Constantinople will become a massively important trade center for Africa, Europe, and Asia. It's kind of right in between all three of those continents, and so it becomes a super duper important trade center over time. In fact, it still exists there today, except it's not called Constantinople anymore. Now it's known as Istanbul, but it's still a very important city. All right, so Constantine had done two things that help the empire hang on for a little bit longer. Number 18 asks you what those two changes were. One was that he outlawed attacks on Christians. He makes Christianity legal. Good job. The second thing he does is that he moves the capital from the Western Roman Empire to the Eastern Roman Empire. He moves it to Constantinople. Okay, you want to make sure that you know that. So number 19, in fact, asks you, where is the new capital and what is it called? Well, the new capital is in the east and it is called Constantinople. All right, so make sure that you have that. You're going to end up finding that the East is going to be a good place to have the capital because there's actually a lot more action happening in the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western Roman Empire only had about 100 large cities with a big population, whereas the Eastern Roman Empire has over 900 cities with a big population. So there's a lot more people there, a lot more trade centers, including Constantinople. So this is going to help the empire hang on a while longer. If you're not ready, push pause because here we go. We just went over that. What does Constantine do? He outlaws attacks on Christians and he moves the capital to the city of Constantinople. All right, number 8 on our slides. Okay, so we had all those internal problems, right? 5 of them: economic problems, social difficulties, agricultural issues, problems with the military, and political corruption. But besides those internal problems, we also have external problems, things that are happening outside of Rome that are ultimately going to cause problems for Rome. One of those external problems is barbarians. Now, make sure you understand that barbarians don't necessarily mean these great big guys with clubs that don't know anything. That's kind of what people picture. All barbarian means is that they're foreigners to the Roman Empire. In the Roman Empire, in the West, most people spoke Latin, and in the Eastern Roman Empire, most people speak Greek. Okay, so these barbarians come in from outside of the empire and they speak lots of different languages that sound very foreign and odd, like gibberish to the Romans. It sounds like ba, 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 ba to them. And so thus comes the name barbarian. All right, so the formal name for these barbarians is Germanic tribes. Dramatic with a G, not D. It's not a dramatic tribe like they're all divas walking around. Okay, no, it's dramatic tribe. No, it's Germanic tribe. Jews, yeah. All right, anyways, so they come in and they really start messing with Rome's borders. They're starting to sneak in past the borders because of the disloyalty going on in the military. And plus, there's just not enough of the military to protect all of the borders all of the time. And so these Germanic tribes start making their way into Rome. Looking at your blue questions, who's trying to invade Rome? Well, the Germanic tribes, also known as the barbarians, are trying to invade. Okay, so here we go. Barbarians, yes, Germanic tribe people that we just talked about. So in the late 300s or so is when they start to push their way into Rome's borders. This is going to be an issue for them for almost 200 years when they're eventually going to end up falling. So why do the barbarians invade? They're looking for better land. They're trying to gain some of Rome's wealth because even though Rome is falling apart and declining and in their minds way poorer than they used to be, Rome is still super wealthy in comparison to a lot of these smaller tribal groups that are wanting to move into their territory. And also, there is a pretty fierce, savage group of people from Central Asia known as the Huns that are making their way across the Asian continent, and people are trying to escape them and so try to find protection in Rome's borders. We are literally almost there, but I don't like going over 15 minutes on any one video. So I'm going to have to wrap this up with part 3. It'll just be a couple more minutes. So come on and tune in for part 3 for 2 or 3 more minutes of video and you will be done. I will see you then.